Welcome to another session. Today we are going to be answering the big question on metabolism. So what is metabolism? Metabolism, first of all, describes a complex process that goes on in living system, and it describes how living things take food and utilize this food to generate energy to sustain itself. Now, when we are talking about living things, we're talking about human beings, bacteria, animal, and plants. Now, living things rest, living things eat, living things walk, and even in the resting state, living things utilize energy. The energy utilized at the resting state is described as basal metabolic rate. So now, what is metabolism? Metabolism is a sum total of all the biochemical process that takes place in living systems to sustain itself. I'll take it again. Metabolism describes the sum total of all the biochemical processes that takes place in living cells to sustain itself. Now, in order of complexity, all living things are made up of cells, and then you have tissues, you have organs, and you have system. Now, because the body is organized, the metabolic process is also organized in a pattern. Now, metabolism can be organized into the anabolic and the catabolic pathways. Now, by pathways, we mean that it goes on in a series of stepwise process. The catabolic pathway describes the breakdown of complex molecules into smaller molecules to generate energy. So these molecules are taken in as food and they serve as fuel, and they are broken down through digestion, all right, to generate energy. Now, the anabolic pathway describes the buildup of biomolecules, all right, cellular components when the body needs. So this is how the body works in a cyclic pattern. Now, there's one important component that plays a major role during the metabolic process, and that is enzymes. Now, enzymes are protein in nature. What do? They catalyze the metabolic pathways and the metabolic reactions. What they do is also they ensure that the reaction goes at a faster rate than it should normally. Now, enzymes also play a major role in regulating metabolic processes at certain steps. Now, one other word you should understand is that in the metabolic pathway, you have the rate limiting step, and you also have the committed step. These are points where the metabolic pathway is regulated. Now, what is the rate limiting step? Like I said, metabolic pathways are catalyzed by enzymes, and the rate limiting step, all right, is a regulatory step unique to the metabolic pathway. Now, what happens in the rate limiting step? The enzyme that catalyzes the rate limiting step determines how the products are formed. So if the enzyme in the rate limiting step is regulated, the products are also regulated. It is a key enzyme in the metabolic pathway. Now, the committed step, all right, it's also unique to the metabolic pathway. What happens in the committed step? The committed step is the first irreversible step in a metabolic pathway. So what happens is that once, all right, the committed step is reached, all right, that pathway is committed to go to the end where the products are formed. So one other characteristic of the metabolic pathway is that they are interrelated. So the substrate, all right, used in a particular pathway to generate a product, this product can serve as a substrate for another pathway. So those pathways must be regulated, and they are regulated at this point where you have the rate limiting step and where you have the committed step. So let's go over it again. Metabolism describes the biochemical process that takes place within the living cell, or the sum total of all the biochemical reactions that take place within the living cell. Why is metabolism necessary? Because the cells or the living system needs to sustain itself. And the metabolic pathway is organized, all right, into the anabolic and the catabolic pathways. The catabolic responsible for the breaking down of complex molecules. For example, you have carbohydrates. They are broken down to the complex, to the simpler molecule, and then to the very simple molecule which generates energy for the body. And then you have the anabolic pathway, which is responsible for building up, all right, complex molecules. Another word can be used for biosynthesis, all right, biosynthetic pathway. Now, we have the pathways catalyzed by enzymes. Now, what do the enzymes do? They speed up the rate of the reaction, one, and number two, all right, they regulate the pathway at specific steps. So you have the rate limiting step, all right, and you also have the committed step. The committed step is the first irreversible step unique to that pathway. So once the reaction gets to the committed step, all right, it does not go back. It gets to, all right, the end of that pathway. So this is just a brief intro of what metabolism is all about. We are going to be looking at the cholesterol metabolic pathway, specifically the biosynthesis of cholesterol as it regards to the endocrine system. Bye-bye.